Greetings, YouTube. The Doctor is in. Dr. Urias Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Dungeons and Dragons. And today we are going to be talking about the spell Mordenkainen Sword. Right now we got the Legacy version up here. We are going to be comparing this to the 2024 version, and we're also going to be looking at this one in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, or as some of you like to call it, First Edition, Second Edition, and Third Edition Dungeons and Dragons, because this is a legacy spell that has carried over through all of the versions of Dungeons and Dragons. So stay tuned. All right. First off, before we go any further, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a question or comment, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. All right, back in the day when we originally did this spell, we gave this spell a D. I did not like this spell at all. I didn't feel that it was up to par for the level of the spell that it was, and the fact that it is a concentration spell, and that there are so many other better 7th level spells than this one. So it was one action. It had a range of 60 feet. A range of 60 feet. It was only usable by bards and wizards. It did cost you 250 gold pieces for a miniature sword, which didn't go away, so you could just keep using that to cast the spell. It lasted for a minute. It was a concentration spell that was an evocation spell, and you created this sword of force in the air that hovered within range, lasted for the entire duration, and then when it appears, you get to make a melee spell attack against a target of your choice within 5 feet of the sword. So you summon the sword adjacent to something, and it did an attack. If you hit, it did 3d10 force damage, which is 16 points of damage. And then until the spell ends, you can use a bonus action on each of your turns to move it up to 20 feet to a spot you can see and repeat the attack against the same target or a different one. So essentially, it was, for your bonus action, it was a chance to do 16 points of damage, which I just didn't feel was up to snuff for something that you were going to have to concentrate on every single round. All right, let's take a look at the new version of the spell. Here it is right here. Basically the same spell, 7th level, one action, and now has a range of 90 feet, so they increased the range by 30 feet. It's still a verbal, somatic, and material component, and still costs 250 gold. Still only usable by bards and wizards. Still lasts for a minute. Still concentration. So you create the sword within range. It hovers. It lasts for the duration. When it appears, you make a melee spell attack against a target within 5 feet. On a hit, it does force damage equal to 4d12 plus your spell ability modifier. Okay, so the original one did 16 points. 5.5 points of damage per d12 times 3 is essentially 16 points of damage. This is now a d12, which does 6.5 points of damage. So it's 26 points plus your spellcasting modifier, which at this level you're going to be 13th level when you can start casting this spell. So it should be around at least an 18, probably a 20. So this is going to do 30 to 31 points of damage every single round. So on later turns, you can use your bonus action, you can move it, and repeat the attack. So 30 damage per round against a target is better. That's way better than the previous 16 points of damage. So it's twice as much damage, essentially, than the last one. It's still a concentration spell. There are still better spells than this, but I think we're going to move this one up to a B-. As a wizard, I might be casting some other stuff. I don't think I'm going to completely cast this one, but it is a free 30 points of damage. That's a pretty big deal to be casting. So let's get rid of this because we're going to talk about some of the other editions of this spell. But this spell has carried over all the way back from 1978 and the Player's Handbook. So let's take a look at that. Here it is right here. Mordenkainen Sword from the Player's Handbook in 1978. 7th level spell. Essentially does the same thing. It's an evocation spell. It lasted for around a level. So if you were a 13th level caster, it would last for 13 rounds. You bring forth a shimmering sword-like plane of force. You are able to mentally wield the weapon, and you can cause it to move and strike as if it were being used by a fighter. So fighters had the best chance to hit. The basic chance for Mordenkainen Sword to hit is the same as the chance for a sword wielded by a fighter, 1/2 the level of the spellcaster. So if the example here, if you were a 14th level magic user, then the weapon had a probability equal to a 7th level fighter. And so the sword has no magical to hit bonus, but it can hit any sort of opponent, even those normally struck by only by +3, and it will hit any armor class on a roll of 19-20. It inflicted 5 to 20 points of damage against opponents of man size or smaller, and 5 to 30 points against larger. It can be used to subdue. It lasts for the duration, and let's get rid of that arrow there. And I mean, that was basically it. I mean, the premise was it's a sword that floats in the air that you can use. It had a range of 3 inches. So 3 inches was like 30 feet back in the day. So not a bad spell. Here is the 2nd edition version of this spell. Range of 30 yards now. 1 round a level. You cast it. You bring this shimmering sword-like thing into the plane of existence. You were able to mentally wield it. All the same stuff, half your level as a fighter, and it did 5d4 points of damage against man size or smaller, and 5d6 points of damage against opponents that are larger. Essentially the same thing. It did cost 500 gold pieces. The 1st edition one did also, I think, cost something. It's 500 gold pieces. And let's take a look at the 3rd edition one. So here's the 3rd edition version. Starts down here. It's still a 7th level spell. It's always been a 7th level spell. And let's get rid of the arrow here. 1 standard action to cast. Had a close range. 1 sword, 1 round a level. No saving throw. And you bring this shimmering sword-like plane of force into existence. The sword strikes an opponent within range. The sword attacks its designated target once a round on your turn. So that was a freebie. No bonus actions, nothing. Just happened. The attack bonus is equal to your caster level plus your intelligence bonus or your charisma bonus, because it was usable, I think, by just wizards and sorcerers. Yeah, wizards and sorcerers. Sorcerers in 3rd edition use charisma, whereas wizards use intelligence, with an additional +3 enhancement bonus. So that was pretty good. As a force effect, it can strike ethereal or incorporeal creatures, and it dealt 4d6 +3 damage with a threat range of 19-20. That means it crit on a 19-20, and it did twice as much damage. The sword always strikes from your direction. It does not get a bonus for flanking, because flanking was a thing. Flanking is an optional rule in the latest versions of Dungeons & Dragons. So each round out of the first, you can use a standard action to switch the sword to a new target. But if you didn't, it just went. You do not, the sword continues to attack the previous target. So this actually made the spell pretty good. You didn't have to do anything. You just cast it, and it was out there, and it just kept going after the same opponent. And if you wanted to switch, you could use an action to make it switch, but for the most part, it just kept attacking. So if an attacked creature... So it did have an armor class, and you could get rid of it. If an attack creature has a spell resistance, the resistance is checked the first time it strikes. If the sword is successfully resisted, the spell is dispelled. If not, then it keeps going. So, but it couldn't be... So one thing I do want to point out here is that the sword cannot be attacked by physical attacks, but Dispel Magic, Disintegrate, Sphere of Annihilation, and Rod of Cancellation affects it, and it didn't have a great armor class. So if you needed to hit it with a Rod of Cancellation, it would be pretty easy to hit. But this was a good spell back in the day. It was not a bad spell. It is a better spell now, but I still don't like this bonus action stuff. I wish that they just let it go. I wish it was like the 3rd edition version of the spell, where you cast it with an action and it just started going after a creature, and it kept doing it every round like a dancing sword that you just let go. And then if you wanted to switch, then you could use an action to switch it to a new target. But it's still okay. Like I said, we're going to give it a B-. It's something that I would maybe cast as a last resort or have as a last resort. It does do force damage, so if you needed that, there is that. All right, that is what I have for everybody. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will catch everybody